drawings that take like forever. He did like a drawing a day.
If you guys haven't seen Sancho's artwork, I seriously, like, if you want to be blown away, like, forget Power Apps, like, forget Power Platform. Like, dude, like, it's another level. It really is. Photorealistic pencil drawings, man. Have a look.
And he's a musician too, right?
I play piano, yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't count. Sancho's musical typewriter. It's not a real instrument.
Oh.
They're almost at the hour, so yes, Geeta, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Okay. At any point, if you want to just go ahead and start the call. I'm started recording, so.
Is Antoinette still on? I don't see.
What's that?
Is Antoinette still on? I don't.
Yeah, she's there.
Oh, okay.
I'm on.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody for joining us. Thank you for joining us for our February 2020 Hangout. And today we have Antoinette joining us today, and AKA Kicking Apps. Yes, you heard that right. That's her handle is Kicking Apps. She really does kick apps, power apps. So she's here to share a very creative template that she built for herself to build responsive Canvas apps. That's what she's here to share with us today. And Antoinette, it's all yours.
Just one thing to point out, she has been doing this before even the responsive features were available and stuff. So she's all about making things responsive. So yeah, if you want to know anything about responsive Canvas app, she's the person to ask. So yeah, thank you, Antoinette, for being here, and go ahead.
Well, thanks for inviting me to present, and I'm excited to share what I have so far. Just keep in mind, it's my disclaimer, it's still in the works. I've still been trying to work on it and improve it. So let me know if you can see my screen.
We see it.
Okay. So what I started with, I was working on, this is just kind of a personal conference app that I've been playing around with and trying to add new features and learning features, and responsive I found was pretty difficult.
Well, yeah.
And pardon?
Hey, sorry, just 1 second. I'll just mute all, and then you can unmute yourself, Antoinette. So just so that we don't hear any background.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, so I spent some time trying to design a responsive template that I can use to simplify the process of designing a responsive app. And what you're seeing right now, I'll share, is the template app that I utilize. And then I'll show you an app and how I put it into place. So I have two monitors usually going, and I created a component in my template app. And in this component, I mimic various screen sizes, which I might be designing for. So you can see this here size is more like an iPhone, mobile phone screen size. This is intended to be more like an iPad screen size, vertical. And then also I switch the layout so it's horizontal and can change the size here. Within this, I created columns and gutters to create a fluid grid. And these are the reference points where I place any of my controls is related to these reference points. So along the column or the gutter, what you see with these is to determine the fluid percentage. So for a Y value, wherever I move this control, this is what I want to refer to in my control if I want it 0.4% down on the screen size. So here's my That's the text. Let me just show you here. So the text is taking the value for the percentage of the screen from the 0 placement. So if I scroll down just a little bit, this would be 50%. And I'll show you this, it'll make more sense. And the height value for this control. So if I want to place an object on my app and I want it to be this height, then I know that's 20% of the app height. And if that's where I'm going to place that object, then I know that this is 10% of the app height to get the Y value. So that way the value is dynamic and it's not hard-coded to this value of 108. And as I change my size of my screen, I might decide to place this object and increase the height. And now I know that this control in my actual app needs to be at, say, 35%. So what I use this box for is this is where I will write the code for the app. So for example, if my app is in considered large vertical orientation and size, then I would say switch and whatever this label is, label layout dot text is large vertical. Then I want my control, whatever this control is, to be, say this is the height. So I would say label control dot height. Or if this is my height control, then it would be 35%. So app dot height times 35, because this is set to 35. And then if my screen size becomes small vertical, I don't want this to take so much of the screen, so I decide I would like it to look about that height looks right. So I would say app.height times 20%. So this is where then I would write my formula, and then I bring that into, and if the placement for my X value is in this size, small vertical, I want the placement to be at column 3. You can see column 3 here. So I would do the same thing. I would say if the size is small vertical, then place this control at column 3.x. If the size is large vertical, I decide maybe I want it placed at column 4.x value, then I would use a switch statement and do the same. And I also use this as a reference to say, if it is a large vertical, then I want the width to be however many columns. So 1, 2, 4, 6, 7 columns and 3 gutter widths. Let me show you how that works. I have this in a component, and what this component is allowing me to do is see these things, how these controls laid out at the various sizes without having to guess in an app, refresh or publish and then refresh and then see what the changes look like. Using these controls, I can change the view, lay these now, you can see how it changes, how it looks in a landscape view, and then I can modify for this landscape view and adjust my formula accordingly. So I'll show you what that looks like here. This is the component. This allows me to see the various screen sizes. I have those gutters and columns formulas here, but I also bring these same gutters and columns into each screen. And I had to do that because there were some ways it was not calculating and updating within each screen. So let me, here on an actual app itself, you will see that I have a view and I can turn the grid on and off. Here is my, within this screen, you'll see there's a group that are the columns and the gutters. And this way I can reference these when I'm designing the app. So for example, the X value for this particular control is set if the layout of the app is a small vertical, then place that control at the column 2.x. If it is large vertical, then column 3.x, or large horizontal, column 4.x. These columns adjust according to the screen width. So I'll show you that formula. And if I'm rambling and not making sense, please somebody just interrupt and ask a question.
Just to let you know, everyone's like super impressed by what you've done here. So everyone's going like, wow, this is super clever. And all the math that you've used here, it's amazing. I mean, I can't imagine kind of even doing anything like this. So yeah, thank you for sharing all this.
Absolutely. I'm happy to share. Here for the gutters, I set the width. After playing around, I just decided to do one standard, regardless of the size of the screen. I set the width to be, let's see. It really is just app width divided by 24. And you can see the size that that creates, and that remains the same throughout, whatever size the screen is, whatever point breaks, that it is app width times 24 or divided by 24. The width for the columns, I use the width formula. This is so that it will be dynamic, and because you can't set a variable and then as the screen changes, the columns won't adjust. So this will allow the columns to dynamically or be fluid as the screen. If somebody is using a desktop, then this calculation will occur as that screen is being minimized or maximized. So I take the app width divided by the 24 that I'm using for the gutters, multiply it by 5, because for a small vertical screen, I need to deduct the number of gutters I have so that I can determine the column width with whatever is left over in the app width. And then I take that and divide it by 8. And let me show you what that looks like on an actual app. So if you'll watch the columns here, I don't know if they're easier to see light or dark. But the dark blue is the gutters, this light blue are the columns, and then the border is this red line. So with using that width formula, you'll see those adjust as I start to minimize the screen. Those calculations are occurring as the screen size changes. And then for all screen sizes except a small iPhone size, I use 12 columns. In small screen vertical, I use 8 columns here, you can see. And then if I maximize out, I have 12 columns for all other screens. By setting those dynamic values, then I refer everything that I set in my controls is based on those column values. So this gallery that you see here is set to, if the screen is large horizontal, then the X value is set to column 4.x. Same goes here with the icons for home or whatever icons I use. These are set to the column X dot value. So you can see this is column 2.x divided by the icon, so that it places everything and remains at that point as the screen is adjusted. And I'll show you another view. So I have this app, the same one that I demonstrated earlier for the conference app. And if I turn the column view on, the grid on, you can see that right now this photo grid is set to column 2.x, and the width is set to 6 columns and 3 gutters. It's calculating the total for that. As I start to expand.
Hey, Antoinette, I think your screen is freezing because we're just seeing the large horizontal version.
Okay.
Yes, we're not seeing you change.
How's that? That come
Yes.
back in?
Yeah.
That's
See it
better.
now.
Okay. So as you could see here, as I minimize or maximize the screen, then the width of this is going to adjust because it's set to always be the width of 6 columns and 3 gutters. And same goes with my button value. And then if I bring it back here to the small screen. So I'm using those dynamic values with the width calculation to calculate these columns as the screen is minimized and maximized. And I have various, you'll see here I have it set to large horizontal to determine if it's horizontal or vertical. And those are the primary things that I run off of is large horizontal, large vertical, and small vertical. And that seems to be enough for all of the formulas so that I can place those values in with my controls. Now, there are some things that require the parent size, knowing the breakpoints. And so I do have here a value for parent size. And I will sometimes refer to that. But for the most part, I use what I was sharing if size and layout, basically small, large, vertical, or horizontal, to place all of my controls on my screen. For a gallery, I use the same method, except because in my gallery, if I show the column and decide that I know I want this time label to be placed at the position of column, let's say this is gutter 3 here, .x value, I have to do an additional calculation just because it's in the parent is the gallery. So I basically just try to get that relative value for the parent control. Let me find the X. It's a little hard to explain, but again, using the width formula, then I calculate where
Yeah,
that,
I think you're sharing your window, and so we are just seeing the app right now.
okay. Sorry, it doesn't. All right. How's that? I think when I'm adjusting the screen, minimizing and maximizing, it keeps changing that. Is that better?
Yep. Yep, we can see
Okay.
the studio. Yeah.
Okay, so the same, I can utilize those same columns when I'm adjusting the X value within a gallery. I just have to calculate and so that it's relative to the size, find the position of the column relative to whatever gallery so it can adjust accordingly. Otherwise, if this is say at 100, if I place this time label at column 4.x, then it takes the value of that. If it's 600, then it'll move it in 600 because of the gallery as the parent. So I had to make a calculation for that as well, so that I can still use those columns in as a reference. And so I'll just walk through real quick some of those places that you can see how I'm using that. So really on a button, the width, again, based on the layout, I determine the width and set my value that way. The X value is the same. So based on, and then that's where I'm using this component to determine those positions, is placing a control here. This isn't meant to be pretty. This is just I just take various controls and I lay them out if I know I'm going to have an image, and then I know that I'll probably want it to take up this much space. And if I know I'm going to have a button, then I'll place a button here. And this is where I determine those formulas. And then once I capture them here, I'll change the size, and then I can adjust accordingly, add that to this and bring it into the actual app that I'm working on. And that's what I do throughout this app for all of these controls, is basically refer to those columns. And I have those columns and gutters in both my screens and also in my primary component, which is used for my layout and my menu here. So in this component, I also have the columns and gutters, so I can refer to them for any items that are within my component. So any questions?
So Antoinette, would you be able to like walk us through what if you want to add a new control to the screen? How do you make use of that framework?
Okay, so we'll just use this button example. If I want to add a button to my screen, and I know that I'm going to want to place it about this location in my app. If the app is large layout, And based on this layout, I want my button to be this width and at this Y value. I would go ahead and determine the layout, and then I would come into this text box, and I would say, I would use a switch statement because I'm going to change that if once I make the screen, once I adjust the screen size. So in this case, for large horizontal, and let's just say I'm working on the width of this button, I would say for large horizontal, I want the width to be 5 columns wide. So we'll just say column 1 dot width times 5. Plus I have 3 gutters in here, what I refer to as gutters. So I would say gutter 1 dot width times 3. And then I would adjust this because I need to account for the resizing of, and so now if the width, I need to move this up here. And if I adjust my screen size, now I know that this, I want to adjust this button so that it is only 4 columns wide, or let's just say now 6 columns wide, and so I would take this and just modify that. So now if my screen is small horizontal, then I would adjust my formula according to, say, I want it 6 column wide and only 2 gutters width. Once that's done, once I'm happy with, after I do this for everything that all the views that I'm considering, I would do the same in this case. So now I would move it to wherever I want here, small vertical here, and make the width maybe just 4 columns wide. Then I would copy this and paste it into my actual app where I have a button, let's say. And so you could see that here for width. So that's where I copy it from the template and I bring it into my actual app. And then I don't think you can. And that was where I was sharing the app and resizing. You could see that adjust accordingly, utilizing that with statement. Did that answer that, Geetha? Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, it does. This is just totally amazing. How long did it take for you to come up with this?
Oh, I took a week's vacation. So,
and
I'm still working on it.
Or
what's that?
That it's a week's vacation totally worth taking for.
Well, and it's been a while since I've opened it up, but I've been trying to refine it so that I can make all parts of it a little bit more responsive. There are some things that I'm still hard coding, but for the most part, just getting this part has saved a lot of time.
I have a wee question. So
Sure.
on time again. So if you're making one of these for somebody, Someone comes in and says, right, Antoinette, I need an app. I need it to be super responsive. I need it to be kicking. How long are you going to tell them it's going to take on top of what the normal build would be?
Well, now with responsive, depending, I can utilizing the component feature and having those menus built in. That reduces my time significantly, and I just plug in the values without. So I would say, Keith, I just give him the estimation for what it would take to build the app without considering the responsive piece, because I have the component built for it. So whereas before I would have to consider adding in a week or two's time just to get the responsive pieces worked out, because it was so tedious. Does that help?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I totally know where you're coming from there.
Yeah. So these, I where here also, I didn't talk about it, but in the responsive piece, what I've also done is utilizing the component feature saves tons of time, and having that responsive grid, fluid grid built in. And then where in this app I'm showing where I'm using this control to determine Y values based on where it's placed within the app to get the percentage from the top. I also have built in some in my component. You'll see I'm also outputting the icons, these bottom icons, Y values now. So where a screen might be, where the layout might be vertical, I can just now refer, instead of using this Y formula percentage, I can say, just take the Y value from the home icon or this icon or the, location icon. And so that's improving. It's not responsive, but what it's doing, it's giving me those reference points as well.
Do you think it's more cost effective in terms of time building a responsive app? Like, say you've got a 5-screen app, right? Is it more effective building something responsive, or is it more effective like maintaining 2 versions of the app? What would you say would be your preference? Just hypothetically, for everyone in the audience who might be wondering whether it's a good idea or not.
Well, with this, I feel like it's making it responsive now because of the ability with that with statement and it making it fluid. So, if you open it on a phone, that you don't need it to be fluid. But if you open it on a desktop, that fluidity really is nice because it keeps everything relative to the position where you've set it. So I prefer the responsive now.
Yep, gotcha.
Just thinking out loud here, but is there any, I know Sancho's on the call, is there any kind of thing that you can, like Sancho's kind of theming plus kind of taking this together? I'm just wondering if there is some possibility to combine those two things so that whenever you insert a control, it automatically takes something, then you just feed in some of the numbers.
Well, I was thinking about that already. Actually, I was thinking, well, what about if initially you have the grids, but those same values could be held by a collection? Because if you're doing that for every single component that's being added, you're gradually increasing the number of controls that are being placed in the app, and that's going to affect performance. Whereas a collection, you can have as many as you want. So once you've done the initial design with the actual grid lines, then you could reference a collection instead of the actual grid lines.
Yes, and I know I did try, but I think I wasn't able to integrate the width values to make it fluid with the collection. And so I maybe just didn't know how, to be honest, but it was, and it's a very good point, because for every screen that I create a fluid grid within that screen. So that is adding up for controls. But that would be really valuable if we can make that fluid, that calculation fluid in the collection. And that was something I couldn't get to work. So that's why I went this route.
Okay. And you've got multiple components on each screen, correct? In this case, and then each of them would have the fluid grid components.
Yes.
So that's for each of them, we're increasing the number. Okay, yeah.
I suppose you could use a nested. What about if you used a nested variable, like a nested global variable, to store the grid and rewrite the grid every time you changed it?
Yeah, like recollect the collection every time you change it.
Yeah, but like you can't set variables with a with statement, sadly, but you could do no, because a with statement wouldn't update, but the actual core grid that sits in the background, if you kept that grid, oh yeah, God, it's tricky, isn't it?
That's where I kept running into problems, was in trying to use a collection or using a variable, was that as I adjusted, because it's calculating dynamically, then I wasn't able to figure out a way to keep resetting those variables or that collection, because I wanted it to happen as I adjusted the screen. So as you can see, those columns are adjusting dynamically, and it's keeping everything in place as I intend for it to be.
Yeah.
So that was one of the complications, but that if anybody can think of a way, that would be great.
A single timer that recollects based on app width and height.
Yeah, that would work like a master clock.
Okay. So every time the screen is adjusted, then the timer resets?
Yeah, because you're kind of getting it. The way that PowerAddicts does that resize, it's kind of jittery as it is now. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't quite. It's not as fluid as a web page. Like a responsive design web page. PowerAddicts has never been able to sort of kind of do that quite as elegantly as responsive design. It's always sort of not quite as smooth, I don't think.
Brian's got a good example in the chat here. He said a slider set to app.width and then using the onChange property of that, because that would trigger every time.
Yeah.
Would. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Brian, the toggle guy.
Yeah.
There you go. That would do it, and it would get rid of we wouldn't, I think you'd probably want the component in there. Mind you could use it as some sort of weird pseudo collection, because I think when you're designing, you probably want to see the grid quite a lot. I mean, when you do graphic design, you always had the grids and the gutters in the background that you would show and hide when you were doing your layout to make sure it was spot on. So yeah. Antoinette, this is fantastic. It's like it's like bringing Quark Express to PowerAddicts. It's incredible.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't able to explain it quite so well. Trying to demonstrate it does help, I hope. And just these ideas are great. The slider idea is great. I will definitely try to implement that as well and see how to make that work.
I think just sharing, just like Shanto's posted your link in the chat, and I think this is one of those ones, Antoinette, where you've done such an incredible job that we all need to go away and have a little look at it and allow the penny to drop in our own minds, because it's a pretty complicated beast,
Well, it's been really fun, and I hope that you can find. I do have in the community. It's you can take a look at it there for sure, and it's the template one that I shared, and then see if you can improve it for sure.
I think the big problem for everyone, Antoinette, is this coinciding with Valentine's Day weekend. And I think we're all in big trouble.
So one question was this kind of inspired a bit from the Bootstrap framework, because it kind of looks, I mean, that's what I have been using when I was doing some website stuff. So did you look into that? Like, what was your reference point to kind of make this?
I looked into the Apple iOS human interface guidelines. And I've been looking some into the Bootstrap now for Fluid to integrate responsive font and that sort of thing. But I've never used Bootstrap before.
Okay.
So this is my first time dipping my toe into design, and for sure Fluid design. So I refer to that Apple iOS human interface a lot for this.
Okay. If anyone has any, I don't see any other questions on the chat, but if anyone wants to ask any question, please feel free to unmute and ask. Okay. All right.
So in the chat window, Vivek, and we'll post them on the YouTube channel as well. I put a link to a couple of books from way back when, on graphic design, grid systems, and typography. Really interesting books, and they've got kind of like a beautiful layout. And then they have there's one particular book, and it has a set of transparencies that lays the grid system over the top. Mm-hmm. And this is like, you know, you're talking about stuff by a guy called Jan Schichold back in the 1920s. And if you look at it, it looks like a nightclub flyer from next week. It's so gorgeous, you know, that it doesn't age. And it's all about grid systems. And they go on to do things that we can't yet do with rotational grid systems and kind of like setting text at angles and all kinds of awesomeness. It's just like you can't describe it until you see it. So go and have a little look at those books, because I think it's the next step and where all this kind of responsive design is always going to be going. But I'm super excited. I'm just going to go and play. I'm going to do for work tomorrow. I'm going to be exhausted.
Yeah. Reza also posted a link to the responsive Canvas app pages coming soon. So I know there's some work going on that. It would be interesting to see what the product team comes up with finally. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening on responsiveness. So try to catch up with all the links that have been posted in the chat. All right, thank you, Antoinette, for sharing all this and kind of having being here for the Hangout. So yeah, this is some, I would say this is some second, like next level stuff. It's hard for us to imagine even kind of start doing something like this. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you. And if anybody has questions, if you do go in there, just message me, and I'm happy to reply, and any feedback is appreciated. Thanks. And thanks for inviting me.
Yep. Her handle is, I think, Tiana Rancho. Is that? And
yes.
The name is Kicking Apps.
That's right. Thank you.
It's hard to forget.
Thanks.
Okay. There are a few conferences coming up. Let me share my screen quickly here just to go through them one by one. The Global Power Platform Bootcamp is coming up actually this Saturday. There are, I think, around more than 40 cities that have participated in this. Look up if there is one already in this location, and if you want to kind of join, if you haven't already, you can still join them. I think it's kind of a boot camp on Power Apps. It's not just Happen a Day, but a bunch of things combined. So yeah.
It's a free event, right? It's a free.
Yeah, it's a free event. Yep, it's a free event.
You know what? We spun the London one up. I got some great help from some people at AgileSys for a venue. We had 25 seats, and we put the ad out on Friday night, and by Sunday morning, they're all gone. It's just totally bonkers, man. Totally bonkers.
Yeah. So yeah, look out for a city near you, and if you can, do attend. It's this Saturday. The next thing, Scottish Summit coming up. I think it's on Feb 29th, if I'm not wrong. That's another great event. A lot of, again, free tickets, a free event, a lot of great speakers. A bunch of them are, I think, on this call as well. So you have, I think this is going to be a great conference, and I'll be missing it. But yeah, if you are nearby, if you can attend, do attend this. And the next one, I think we probably will have a hangout before it, but just to let you know, the Power Platform Online Conference, that's happening on Friday, March 20. It's going to be a virtual event, so you can join it from anywhere, so you don't have to go in person. And there are going to be a lot of good sessions on this. Last year, I think we had a flow conference. Now I think it's gone all Power Platforms. So look out for this one as well. The sessions, the list of sessions will be released soon on this. Okay, I don't know if did I miss out any other conference? Anything else coming up?
Well, there's that big one called MBAS, Vivek. I mean, that's.
I mean, that's we have some time for that. But yeah, MBAS, I think it's what, May 5th and 6th, or 6th and 7th, something like that, at New Orleans. So yeah.
No, it's Dallas.
Dallas, sorry. I got mixed
I
up.
don't think it's again. It's in Dallas.
New Orleans is Ignite.
I think
sorry.
Ignite is or New Orleans. Yeah.
That's September or something. Okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
Don't move it again, Vivek.
Don't move it again. Yeah. Already got moved once. All right. I don't know if was there anything else, Geeta, that we had to cover?
I think that's it. I mean, we have another 5 to 10 minutes. If anybody has any questions or anything you want to talk about.
Unless it's licensing. We did that last week. We'll do that again.
No licensing question.
Already did that. There was a whole hangout focused for that.
Yep. If you haven't watched that, go ahead and go to the YouTube channel, PowerAddicts, and look at that session where Alan, Ryan Cunningham, and Dr. No, is that
Ken? Yeah.
Ken. So Ken. So yeah, look out for that session as well. It was one of the, I would say, amazing sessions that we have had. So many questions, so much interaction. So yeah. All right. If there aren't any other questions, we'll meet next month. We'll make sure that we post it much before than the last day. So, but yeah, thank you all for joining at the last minute. And we'll post about the next hangout as well as soon as we can. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
And let's stop recording.